There's a certain kind of peace you only find when you're standing on land that your family has owned for generations. You know every tree, every creek, and every sound the forest makes. I grew up with my hands in the dirt, and I always knew my wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts, but in acreage. My name is Wyatt. I'm 36 years old. I have a master's degree in environmental biology, but my day job is running the 120-acre farm I inherited from my grandfather. It's a beautiful piece of property, heavily wooded in the back, but it doesn't make a lot of money. Just enough to pay the property taxes and keep the lights on. 5 years ago, I married Jessica. Jessica was a city girl. When we met, she thought the farm was rustic and romantic, but the romance of country living fades fast when you realize there are no five-star restaurants down the road and the internet drops out when it rains. Jessica was ambitious. She got a real estate license and started working for a massive commercial development firm in the city, commuting an hour each way. I thought she was just trying to build a career, but I didn't realize that to her, my family's legacy was just a pile of dirt standing between her and a luxury lifestyle, and she was perfectly willing to bury me under it.
The shift in our marriage coincided with a promotion she got at her firm. She started working directly under the CEO, a guy named Blake. Blake was a 45-year-old corporate predator. He wore $3,000 suits, drove a Range Rover, and made his millions paving over forests to build strip malls and luxury subdivisions. Suddenly, Jessica was staying in the city 3 nights a week, claiming she was exhausted from the commute and staying at a friend's condo. Then, the psychological warfare began. She started relentlessly attacking my life. "Wyatt, we are practically broke," she would complain, walking through our farmhouse in designer shoes I knew we couldn't afford. "This farm is a money pit. You're a biologist. You could get a 6-figure job consulting in the city. We could buy a penthouse. Why are you so obsessed with this useless piece of land?" She brought it up every single day. The pressure to sell was immense. I told her I would rather die than sell my grandfather's farm to a developer. Then, out of nowhere, her tone changed. She stopped yelling and started crying. She told me the stress of the farm was ruining our marriage. She said if I loved her, I would sell the land so we could start fresh. She even said she had a buyer, a private investor willing to pay $1.2 million in cash, which was slightly above market value for rural farmland. It sounded like a lucky break. But in nature, if something looks too good to be true, it's usually bait. Because I have wild coyotes and trespassers on the back 40 acres of my property, I have motion-activated cellular trail cameras hidden in the trees. They send video clips directly to my phone. One Wednesday afternoon, while Jessica was supposedly at the office in the city, my phone buzzed. Camera 4, located deep in the woods near the old creek, had been triggered. I opened the app. It wasn't a coyote. It was Blake's black Range Rover parked on my property. I watched the live video feed. Blake and Jessica got out of the car. They weren't looking at the trees. They were kissing. Deeply. I felt the air leave my lungs. But then they started walking around, and the camera's highly sensitive microphone picked up their conversation. Blake was pointing at the tree line. The Department of Transportation is officially announcing the new interstate bypass next month. The main exit ramp is going to drop right through this creek. The state is going to pay at least $15 million for this parcel under eminent domain. Jessica laughed, leaning against him. And Wyatt has absolutely no idea. He thinks he's getting a great deal for $1.2 million. As soon as his signature is on the deed, my lawyer serves him the divorce papers. We take the $15 million from the state, and I never have to look at this pathetic farm again. I sat on the porch of my grandfather's house staring at my phone. My wife was sleeping with a corporate shark, and together they were using insider government knowledge to steal my $15 million inheritance for pennies. They thought I was just a dumb, dirt-kicking farmer, but they forgot one crucial detail. I am an environmental biologist, and I know exactly how to protect my territory. You don't fight a bulldozer with a shovel. You fight it with red tape. I didn't run into the woods and confront them. I stayed on the porch, drank my coffee, and let them drive away. When Jessica came home that night, acting sweet and asking if I had thought about the investor's offer, I gave an Oscar-worthy sigh. "You're right, Jess," I said, looking defeated. "The farm is too much work. If this investor is offering $1.2 million cash, let's take it. I'll sign the papers next week." Her eyes lit up with pure, greedy joy. She thought she had won. The next morning, while she was at work, I went deep into the woods. I wasn't looking for coyotes. I was looking for leverage. As a biologist, I knew my land perfectly, and I knew that my grandfather's old creek was one of the last remaining pristine habitats in the state for a very specific, highly protected creature, the Indiana bat. It's a federally recognized endangered species, and federal law states that if an endangered species relies on a specific piece of land for nesting, that land absolutely cannot be cleared, logged, or developed. I spent 3 days surveying the woods until I found exactly what I needed: a massive dead oak tree with peeling bark, a maternal roosting colony of Indiana bats. I took high-resolution photos, logged the GPS coordinates, and made a phone call. I didn't call the local police. I called the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Because I am a credentialed biologist, they sent a federal wildlife inspector out the very next day. I showed him the roost, he verified the colony, and was absolutely thrilled. "Wyatt, this is a massive find," he said. "We are going to immediately designate these 80 acres as a federally protected critical habitat." "Do it," I told him. "Put it on the Federal Register immediately, but keep the public announcement quiet for a few weeks. I'm in the middle of a property transfer." By federal law, once land is designated critical habitat for the Indiana bat, it becomes untouchable. You cannot cut down a tree, you cannot pave a road, the Department of Transportation cannot build a highway through it, even with eminent domain. The land becomes commercially worthless. 2 weeks later, Jessica handed me a stack of legal documents. It was a quitclaim deed and a purchase agreement transferring 100% of the farm to an anonymous LLC, which I knew Blake owned, for $1.2 million. I signed it. The money was wired into my personal bank account, which I immediately transferred into an offshore trust my lawyer had set up, completely out of Jessica's reach. 3 days later, just as they planned, Jessica handed me divorce papers. "I'm sorry, Wyatt," she lied, trying to look sad. "I just don't love you anymore." "I know," I said, smiling for the first time in a month. "Have fun with Blake." She froze, wondering how he knew his name, but she didn't care. She was too busy dreaming of $15 million. Blake didn't waste any time. To buy the land and prepare it for the massive state highway buyout, he had leveraged his own development company, taking out a $3 million high-interest bridge loan. 1 week after the divorce was filed, Blake sent a fleet of heavy bulldozers and logging equipment to the edge of the woods to start clearing the trees before the state officially announced the highway project. Jessica was standing next to his Range Rover, wearing a hard hat, literally holding a glass of champagne. I was sitting on the tailgate of my truck across the road, watching with binoculars. The first bulldozer fired up its engine and moved toward the tree line. Before the blade even touched a branch, 3 white SUVs with green federal license plates came tearing down the dirt road, lights flashing. Armed federal agents from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the EPA jumped out of the vehicles. They stepped right in front of the bulldozers, holding up their hands. I watched through the binoculars as the lead federal agent walked up to Blake. He handed him a thick stack of papers. "Sir, shut these machines down immediately," the agent yelled. "This entire property has been federally designated as a critical habitat for an endangered species under the United States government. If you touch a single tree on this land, you will face federal prison time and $1 million fine." Blake's face turned the color of ash. He started screaming at the agent, waving the deed. "I own this land. The state is building a highway here." "Not anymore, they aren't," the agent replied coldly. "The Department of Transportation has already been notified. The highway bypass has been permanently rerouted 30 miles south. This land is undevelopable forever." Jessica dropped her glass of champagne. It shattered on the dirt. She looked across the road and made eye contact with me. I tipped my hat to her, got in my truck, and drove away.
The smoke is clearing. The financial devastation was absolute. Because the land was now federally protected and the highway project was rerouted, Blake's $15 million payday vanished into thin air. He was stuck owning 120 acres of land that he couldn't build on, couldn't sell, and couldn't develop. But he still owed the bank the $3 million bridge loan he took out to finance the scheme. He defaulted on the loan. The bank seized his commercial development company, liquidated his assets, and forced him into personal bankruptcy. His career as a luxury developer was over. When Jessica realized Blake was bankrupt, the romance died instantly. She tried to come crawling back to me during the divorce mediation, claiming Blake had manipulated her. My lawyer simply played the audio clip from the trail camera. He thinks he's getting a great deal. I never have to look at this pathetic farm again. The judge awarded her absolutely nothing. I kept the $1.2 million from the sale, completely free and clear, because the sale was executed before the divorce was finalized, and I had legally transferred it to my sole trust. It's been almost 4 years. I took Blake's $1.2 million and moved to Montana. I bought 500 acres of absolutely stunning, untouched wilderness right next to a national park. I run a highly successful environmental consulting firm, and I spend my weekends fishing and hiking. I'm engaged to a woman who loves the outdoors as much as I do, and who would rather sleep in a tent than a penthouse. As for Jessica, the real estate firm fired her when Blake's company collapsed in scandal. With no money, no husband, and a ruined reputation in the city, she had to move into a tiny, run-down apartment. She works as a leasing agent for a cheap apartment complex, showing people homes, while she owns nothing. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's this: never underestimate someone just because they don't wear a suit. If people try to push you off your own territory, don't play their game. Play the long game. Know your environment. Secure your leverage. And when they bring in the bulldozers, let nature fight your battles for you. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what's the most satisfying time you've ever seen someone's greed backfire? Stay grounded and respect the wild.